Okay. Good afternoon. Bonjour tout le monde. Today, my cabinet colleagues and I met to discuss Canada's response to the latest developments in the trade crisis. Yesterday, in the latest salvo in his trade war, President Trump again imposed unjustified tariffs on our nation in violation of our existing trade agreements. This time, he targeted the auto industry and the more than 500,000 hardworking, dedicated Canadians that industry supports across our country. Now, the President of the United States is trying to fundamentally restructure his economy. It means our economy, and it means the global economy as well. And I understand and respect his goal to support American workers, but I disagree with him that this is how to help them. With time, it will become apparent that these actions will end up hurting American workers and American consumers. I reject any attempts to weaken Canada, to wear us down, to break us so that America can own us. That will never happen. And our response to these latest tariffs is to fight, is to protect, and to build. We will fight the U.S. tariffs with retaliatory trade actions of our own that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impacts here in Canada. We will protect our workers and our industries during this difficult period. But above all, we will build a new Canadian economy. We will build Canada strong. Se battre pour nos travailleurs, protéger notre économie et nos concitoyens, bâtir un Canada fort. Il est évident que les États-Unis ne sont plus un partenaire fiable. Il se peut qu'avec les négociations compréhensives, on puisse rétablir un élément de confiance, mais il n'y aura pas de retour en arrière. Le prochain gouvernement et tous ceux qui suivront aura une relation fondamentalement différente avec les États-Unis. Coming to terms with this sobering reality is the first step to taking necessary actions to defend our nation. But it's only the first step. Last night, the President of the United States reached out to schedule a call. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss how we can protect our workers and build our economies. I will make clear to the President that those interests are best served by cooperation and mutual respect, including of our sovereignty. Entre-temps, je viens de tenir une rencontre avec mon comité ministériel Canada-États-Unis. Je convoque une réunion des premiers ministres qui se tiendra demain. Je vais rencontrer mon conseil des relations canado-américaines et je parlerai aux chefs d'entreprise, aux syndicats et aux dirigeants autochtones. Ces discussions permettront d'avoir une réponse coordonnée en tenant compte ce que le président décidera de faire le 2 avril, date à laquelle il a menacé d'imposer des droits de douane supplémentaires. Soyons clairs, nous sommes tous sur la même longueur d'onde. Nous répondrons avec force. Rien n'est exclu pour défendre notre pays. Let's be clear. We're all on the same page. We won't back down. We will respond forcefully. Nothing is off the table to defend our workers and our country. Now, to my fellow Canadians, I don't want to set unreasonable expectations. The road ahead will be long. There is no silver bullet. There is no quick fix. And I know and I understand that many are feeling anxious and worried about the future. Fundamental change is always unsettling. But I have every confidence in our country because I understand what President Trump does not. That we love Canada with every fiber of our being. Because we are stronger when we are together, and Canadians are uniting as never before. Now, we are going to have to live the lessons of recent months. First, that we have to look out for ourselves, and second, that we have to look out for each other. The federal government will do everything in its power to protect Canadian workers and businesses. We will be here for you every step of the way. In the past week, my government committed to use every dollar collected from our retaliatory tariffs to protect our workers. Et la semaine dernière, j'ai annoncé plusieurs mesures ciblées, temporaires, pour soutenir les travailleurs et les entreprises directement touchées par la guerre commerciale de Président Trump. Pour les travailleurs, nous avons supprimé le délai de carence d'une semaine de l'assurance emploi. Nous avons fait en sorte qu'il n'ait pas à épuiser leur indemnité de licenciement avant de toucher l'assurance emploi et nous avons facilité l'accès à l'assurance emploi. Pour les entreprises, nous avons reporté les paiements d'impôts sur le revenu ainsi que les versements de la TPS et de la TVH. Nous avons mis en place un nouveau mécanisme de financement pour leur fournir de liquidités. C'est une aide financière énorme pour que les entreprises puissent passer à travers la tempête. Et nous avons augmenté le financement des agences de développement régional. Our biggest challenge as a country is becoming the most urgent. Over the coming weeks, months, and years, we must fundamentally reimagine our economy. We will need to ensure that Canada can succeed in a drastically different world. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over. What exactly the United States does next is unclear. But what is clear is that we, as Canadians, have agency. We have power. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. We can control our destiny. We can give ourselves much more than any foreign government, including the United States, can ever take away. We can deal with this crisis best by building our strength right here at home. It will take hard work. It will take steady and focused determination from governments, from businesses, from labor, from Canadians. We will need to dramatically reduce our reliance on the United States. We will need to pivot our trade relationships elsewhere. And we will need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations. But we can make ourselves more productive and therefore more competitive. We can break down internal trade barriers. We can build a stronger and more resilient economy. And that's what I'm squarely focused on as your Prime Minister. During my first 9 days as Prime Minister, I came to an agreement with the provinces and territories to remove all exemptions under the Canada Free Trade Agreement. As the federal government, we created a First Mile Fund to provide capital to build transmission and transportation networks to link extraction sites to rail lines and roads. nous mettons en place une procédure d'approbation à un guichet unique. Nous éliminons les excisions fédérales, créant des doublons en reconnaissant les évaluations provinciales pour les grands projets. Un projet, un examen. Nous présentons une législation d'ici le 1er juillet pour que les marchandises puissent circuler dans tous les pays sans barrière. Nous supprimons les barrières fédérales qui empêchent les provinces et les territoires de faire un commerce les unes avec les autres. My government is committed to removing any labor mobility restrictions for federally regulated professions by Canada Day. And we're now working with the provinces to identify projects of national significance in order to accelerate the time frame to build them. Hier, je me suis engagé à créer un fonds de réponse stratégique pour le secteur automobile, un fonds de 2 milliards de dollars qui protégera les emplois des travailleurs touchés par les tariffs de M. Trump. We will create an all-in-Canada network of supply chains for the auto manufacturing components, straight through to Canadian steel and aluminum and critical minerals. And we committed today to create similar strategies in other sectors that are under threat from President Trump's tariffs. All of these initiatives will go a very long way to offsetting the costs of these tariffs if they are permanent, and they will help to realize our potential as a nation. But there's even more to do. And that's why I chose to go to France and the United Kingdom, two long-standing and reliable partners, friends, and allies of Canada. And it's why the time will come for a broad renegotiation of our security and trade relationship with the United States. It's why I will work intensively with our partners in business, in labor, the territories and the provinces to find more ways to help Canadians through this crisis and to ensure that our great country emerges stronger than ever. In recent weeks, Canadians have done their part to unite in defense of our country. To unite also in defense of our way of life. It's my solemn promise as your Prime Minister to do the same. It's my solemn promise that when President Trump threatens us again, we will fight back. We will fight back with everything we have to get the best deal for Canada. We will build an independent future for our country stronger than ever. We will stand up for Canadian workers. We will stand up for Canadian business. We will stand up for our history, our values, and our sovereignty. We will stand together to build Canada strong, Canada free, Canada forever. Thank you. Merci, and I'll be happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We will now take 15 minutes of questions. One question, one follow-up.
Bonjour, M. Carney, Raymond Quignon de TVA. Vous avez dit que le président Trump a contacté votre bureau pour organiser un appel. Est-ce que cette conversation entre vous et le président Trump a eu lieu? Sinon, à quel moment aurait-elle lieu?
Il y aura une conversation entre moi et M. le Président dans les prochains jours. L'appel arrivera bientôt. The question was whether the President and I have spoken following his office contacting mine to arrange the call. The response is we'll be speaking soon, certainly in the course of the next day or two.
Ça fera 2 semaines demain que vous êtes Premier ministre du Canada. Ouais. Est-ce que ce n'était pas une erreur de votre part de ne pas avoir eu une conversation encore en date d'aujourd'hui avec le président? Est-ce que vous auriez dû lui parler avant, M. Trump?
Non, il y a des conversations entre les ministres, par exemple, le ministre des Finances, le ministre des Affaires étrangères, les ministres des échanges internationaux avec leurs homologues américains. Ils sont dans des conversations souvent. Mais il faut avoir une réponse compréhensive. Et tout le monde le sait que le 2 avril, il y aura des autres initiatives, des autres menaces tarifaires des Américaines. Alors, après tout cela, on peut avoir une réponse plus grande. Alors, pour moi, il y a deux conditions d'avoir pas nécessairement un appel, mais d'avoir une négociation avec les Américains. Premièrement, c'est le respect. Le respect pour notre souveraineté comme pays. C'est pas grand-chose, mais évidemment, c'est grand-chose pour lui. Mais il faut avoir le respect. Et deuxièmement, il faut avoir une conversation et une discussion compréhensive, y compris nos relations sécuritaires et économiques. Merci.
Merci. Suivante question.
Hi, Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star. Can you be more specific about what your counter plan is next week when the auto tariffs come in? Specifically, how much in terms of tariff measures you're going to take on what portion of American goods and what non-tariff measures you'll use?
So, thanks for the question. And it goes a bit back to the previous question, if I may just expand on my answer to that. This is a negotiation. It's in part a negotiation where we know certain things, and we know that there was going to be an initiative on automobiles. It was brought forward to yesterday. It was expected around the same time as the reciprocal tariffs on the 2nd of April. Those initiatives, just to be clear, apply to all countries in the world. Right? So it's not unique in and of versus Canada or versus Mexico. We have the best deal of a bad deal, is the way I would term it, within what the Americans have proposed. The second is that we know that there are going to be these reciprocal tariffs, as you referenced in your question, on the 2nd of April, as well as there are potential tariffs, or likely tariffs, I would put it, with respect to other, quote, strategic sectors to the Americans, forestry, lumber, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors. There was a comma after that. I'm sorry, it was a very long set of conditions, but it was to set up the point, which is that we have a number of measures that we can take in response to those initiatives. In our judgment, certainly my judgment, it doesn't make sense when there's a series of U.S. initiatives that are going to come in relatively rapid succession to respond to each of them. We're going to know a lot more in a week, and we will respond then. And in a negotiation, it doesn't make sense to tip your hand and say what you're going to do going forward. So that is ça c'est la circonstance en français, si tu veux. Juste le message clé. OK. C'est une négociation. Il y a des initiatives des Américaines, y compris les tarifs de 2 avril, les tarifs contre le bois d'œuvre, par exemple, et d'autres. Ça vaut mieux pour le Canada. Ça vaut mieux pour le Canada de réagir après tout cela, okay, avec la transparence. Et on va le faire. Ça, c'est clair. Other point I would make, I have discussed this with Premier Ford, in his role as Council of the Federation, obviously be discussing with the First Ministers under that guise when we convene tomorrow, and I think it's appropriate in taking a response to have those consultations, get the perspectives. The federal government obviously acts taking its responsibilities, but makes sense to engage, and we will act.
President Trump today warned Canada about responding and retaliating, warning that he will escalate his response against Canada, and your minister, Mr. LeBlanc, has spoken to Mr. Lutnick. What message, then, are you taking from that, and are you prepared to bear the brunt of that escalation threat from Mr. Trump? How much pain can Canada take?
Well, look, our responsibility, my responsibility, Minister LeBlanc, Minister Champagne, Mr. Joly, the Cabinet, the government, our responsibility is to Canada and is to get the result for Canada. So our response will be calibrated in order to achieve that. We choose our own allies in Canada. We choose how we engage those allies. We are sovereign. So I take note of the President's comment. I don't take direction from it.
CTV News. Will you or any cabinet officials be heading to Washington to meet with the U.S. administration?
It's possible that some cabinet officials will. I think, given the timelines, the President and I will speak. As I mentioned, I look forward to the discussion. We'll see where we go from there.
Follow-up?
And just to follow up on Tanja's question, what do you think about President Trump threatening Canada with more tariffs if Canada works with the EU on countermeasures?
Well, look, we're a sovereign nation. We take our own decisions. I take note of his comments, nothing more.
Next question.
Mr. Carney, Mackenzie Gray with Global News. The last time Premier Ford put electricity tariffs going to the States, there was quite a reaction from President Trump. When you're considering what the retaliatory tariffs that you bring in the future, is there a consideration to put retaliatory or export taxes on Canadian energy going to the U.S.?
Look, we have many options, and we will use them. We will use them judiciously.
And so, on oil and gas, that is an option that you're considering putting an export tax on.
Look, yeah, as I said a moment ago to Ms. McCharles, it's a negotiation. You don't, you act when you act. You don't pre-commit.
Thank you. Next question.
Oui, bonjour, M. Carney.
Bonjour.
Pour faire suite à la question de mon collègue, quand même, il y a eu une escalade, vous l'avez dit vous-même. Est-ce que c'est de plus en plus probable que le Canada décide de mettre une taxe sur ses exportations d'énergie? Est-ce que la probabilité a augmenté?
C'est une option, mais pas plus que ça. Plus que ça. Follow-up?
Je veux vous amener sur un autre sujet. Hier, quand vous étiez à Kitchener et que vous avez parlé avec des sympathisants libéraux, vous avez dit que vous avez besoin d'un gouvernement majoritaire parce que vous voulez faire des gros changements. Est-ce que ça pourrait être perçu comme un excès de confiance de votre
C'est pas un excès. C'est pas un excès de confiance. Il faut gagner chaque vote. Mais ce qui est nécessaire, surtout dans cette situation, est que le gouvernement a un mandat clair et fort. Ça vaut mieux d'avoir un mandat clair et fort afin d'avoir une grande négociation, une négociation compréhensive, une négociation probablement la plus importante négociation pendant notre vie, surtout pendant ma vie. Hein. Quand je suis né, le pacte d'Otto a été créé et maintenant c'est fini. C'est fini avec les tarifs. Hein. Alors, c'est très sérieux cette situation. C'est très sérieux les tarifs sur l'aluminium et l'acier. C'est très sérieux la possibilité des tarifs sur le bois d'œuvre et tout cela. Alors, il faut avoir un mandat clair et fort. Et j'essaie de l'avoir, mais on verra. Madame. It's important to have a strong and clear mandate coming out of this election, given the seriousness of the situation in autos, in forestry, in aluminum, and semiconductors across a range of industries. We haven't seen, this is the biggest, if I didn't say this exactly, but I'll resume, the biggest crisis in our lifetimes. And the government is going to need to act, and the stronger the mandate is, the more effective we are going to be getting the best deal for Canada with respect to the Americans. Madame.
Suivante question.
Bonjour, M. Carney. Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. L'Ontario semblait croire qu'il pourrait être touché par des tarifs moins importants sur l'automobile que peut-être d'autres juridictions.
C'est correct.
Est-ce que c'est vrai?
C'est vrai.
C'est votre compréhension?
Oui, ouais. OK, continue et je vais répondre.
Non, mais c'est ça ma question. Est-ce que c'est ce que vous avez compris aussi?
Les tarifs, par exemple, pour le Japon et la Corée et pour l'Union européenne, en effet, c'est plus grand que les tarifs pour le Canada, pour le Canada. Mais 25%, c'est grand. Et c'est des tarifs pour des autos et des pièces. Alors, Suivant. The question is, in effect, the tariff for Canada on autos is lower than the tariffs, the effective tariffs for Japan and Korea and other jurisdictions, because there are other supplemental aspects to those tariffs. But that said, the tariff is 25%, and it's significant going from, anyways, I think you follow the point, yes.
Quand vous allez parler à M. Trump dans les prochains jours,
Ouais.
à votre avis, là, quelles sont les chances que vous le fassiez reculer sur les tarifs sur l'automobile?
C'est une bonne question. Je crois que M. Trump, M. le Président, il a déjà identifié 5 secteurs stratégiques pour l'économie américaine. Les autos, le bois d'œuvre, l'acier, l'aluminium, c'est un secteur évidemment, les semi-conducteurs et puis le pharma. Il a une stratégie qui utilise des tarifs. Alors la possibilité de revenir en avant, ça c'est difficile. Mais la nécessité de changer son propos, son initiative d'hier, ça existe. Alors, on verra, mais ce sera un appel, pas le point final. C'est le commencement d'une négociation, ce n'est pas la fin. Ce sera pas la fin. Do you need it in English? Or,
Yes, please, thank you.
Look, the President has identified 5 strategic sectors. I listed them. Hopefully they were clear. Pharma, forestry, lumber effectively, steel and aluminum, autos, semiconductors, yes, thank you. Yes, I thought I mentioned it, but yes, semiconductors. Those are his 5 strategic areas. He will use a tariff strategy. He's been clear about this, to use a tariff strategy to repatriate as much activity of that to the United States. It's not clear that's going to change, okay? But what I said was, what I emphasized, what's essential is that there are huge parts of the auto sector where it will be necessary to change or the damage to the U.S. economy will be much greater. Last point is, our conversation is the start of a negotiation, not, don't expect it to be the end.
Last question.
Emily Hawes, Globe and Mail. Do you have a strategy to save the auto industry that doesn't rely on U.S. market access?
Yeah. This is a crucial question, and I'm going to broaden your question if I may. I'm going to broaden the question to the 5 strategic industries I just referenced, all of which are important to Canada. And in fact, I would broaden it further to strategic industries that are important to Canada that are not on the list for the President, for example, critical metals and mineral, for example, artificial intelligence, for example, our energy sector, both clean and conventional. For all of those areas, we have been developing strategies, and we will develop comprehensive industrial strategies that work best for Canada. I'm going to give you one example, if I will, Emily, and then I'll hand back, which is we announced yesterday, for exactly these reasons, in anticipation of what happened today, wasn't originally, or yesterday, sorry, as it turned out yesterday, the American tariffs in the auto sector, we announced the Strategic Response Fund and a series of other measures. But the core of that is to build out the auto sector and our auto supply chain in Canada as much as possible. Instead of autos going back and forth across the border 6 times and getting a tariff each time, we now know the level of that tariff, but integrating the supply chain here domestically, use a fancy term, backwards integrating into steel and aluminum to help our steel and aluminum industries that are used and encourage that, backwards integrating further into critical metals and minerals that we're going to develop. And I listed a number of things that we did at the start that agreed with provinces and the development, working very closely with Premier Ford and others on development of the Ring of Fire rapidly, because that is all relevant to the competitiveness of our auto industry as well as good jobs there and other things. So we have a very clear strategy. We put $2 billion on the table for that. We're changing our federal procurement. We're only going to buy Canadian cars, 40,000 vehicles that we buy in federal procurement. You will see a lot more of that. That's part of an integrated industrial strategy that has the objective of having strategic economic autonomy here in Canada. That's what we want. We want to build out so that we are literally in control of our economic destiny. Now, part of that, and I'll hand back for your follow-up, part of that is going to be trading relationships with reliable partners. The question that hangs over all of this with the United States is there going to be a point in the future through a negotiation where in certain sectors, Canadian workers, Canadian businesses, Canadians as a whole can have that confidence in terms of a deeper commercial relationship with the United States in certain sectors? That remains to be seen.
Follow-up.
Can we sustain an auto industry without the United States?
We can sustain an auto industry with, well, we can sustain an auto industry with the U.S. having tariffs, with access to other markets, provided we engage very deliberately in partnership, government, business, labor, to reimagine the auto sector and retool that auto sector. And that's very much what we're putting on the table, we're engaged with doing. It's part of the reason why I was in Windsor and through southwestern Ontario yesterday. That's part of the reason why I was meeting with the president of Unifor to how do we work together with labor on exactly this issue. But I'll go back to what I said a moment ago, and this is a key message for Canadians. We are going to have to do some things very differently. We're going to have to make some big changes, but we can make those big changes. We do have options. We do have agency. We do have power. We do have the resources, particularly if we work together. And so there is a big silver lining in this situation. We didn't ask for this fight. We've got it, and we're going to fight back. We're going to protect workers in the short term. But we're taking the lesson. We have to look after ourselves. We have to build Canada strong.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's press conference.
Thank you. I think, in fairness to the others, that's probably the end, right? Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.